In a quiet suburban street where the past and present mingled in secret whispers, Audrey lived a life that seemed ordinary, yet was anything but. She never considered herself a time traveler, but she possessed a rare gift, the ability to drift effortlessly between moments, as if each memory were a page in a well-worn book. One cool Tuesday morning, when soft clouds playfully cast shadows over the kitchen table, Audrey's life tilted on its axis. As her mother, Margaret, kneaded dough with hands dusted in flour under the gentle glow of the rising sun, fate intervened. Audrey, reaching for a glass of orange juice, accidentally nudged a dusty photo album off the counter. It fluttered open onto the floor, revealing vibrant snapshots of wide-eyed children from decades long past. "Who are these kids?" Audrey murmured, holding a photo of a little girl with curly hair and laughing eyes, a face that stirred unnamed memories. Margaret paused, her gaze passing over her spectacles as she replied enigmatically, "I think you know." Audrey's heart pounded when she recognized a constellation of freckles, perfectly scattered across the girl's nose, as if they were etched by a familiar hand. With a mix of wonder and disbelief, she exclaimed, "This is me!" Even though the photograph belonged to a different era, it was unmistakably her reflection, a revelation that opened a door to all the hidden secrets of their old Victorian house. Somewhere above, behind faded wallpaper and muffled stillness on the third floor, lay an attic, bursting with carefully packed trunks and boxes labeled with names whispered in family legend. In that moment, Audrey resolved to explore not only this remarkable album, but every shadowy secret that might bind her to generations of adventures and mysteries. High above the city's clamor, on a rooftop beneath a black sky spangled with restless stars, Jay and Mona were forging their own small mythology. The night held its breath as the clear air faded into gathering clouds, while rain began to tap against the city's skin. Mona traced odd shapes among the stars with her delicate finger, asking, "What's that one?" Jay, more enchanted by the playful way Mona's hair fanned around her face than by any celestial formation, grinned and replied, "A human with unfinished projects?" Mona's smile widened, her teeth glinting in the starlight as she teased him. "Is that what you call your autobiography?" With a chuckle that softened his tone, Jay admitted, "More like my disaster piece." As their laughter mingled with the distant hum of a helicopter and the murmur of city streets below, Mona gently suggested, "What if we wrote something together?" Jay's eyes, flickering with memories of unfinished screenplays and half-forgotten tales, met hers. "What if we start now?" "Right here," he proposed, pointing upward towards the endless tapestry of the night. They began crafting fragments of stories, tales of daring heroes and far-off worlds spun from the very silhouettes of light overhead, until the rain's persistent rhythm forced them to seek shelter, leaving their nascent narrative echoing in the night air. Meanwhile, far from these tender moments of creation, a young boy named Garrett was unknowingly laying the groundwork for his future legacy. At the tender age of 10, he had written his first Haunting, a mischievous tribute to the mysterious ghost said to rattle antique toys in the dead of night. Whispers of its existence had inspired local kids to dare each other to creep up to Aaron's room, leaving windows ajar and lights on, daring the spectral presence to leave behind a token in the form of handwritten messages. In chicken scratch script on crinkled brown paper, messages would occasionally read, "What's for dinner?" or, by another prankster, "Too loud." Though these notes sometimes led to chaotic consequences in school cafeterias and during assemblies. Nervous yet resourceful, Garrett learned to use these gossamer paper planes to forge connections, join clubs, and even bypass exclusionary practices, especially when the geometry club wouldn't let him play with their protractors under the guise of members only. When his friend Aaron received a mysteriously cryptic email stating, "Do they bite?" Despite the mischief and the unanswered questions, by his senior year, Garrett had amassed 8 AP credits and secured a scholarship to Honors College, far away, a quiet rebellion against being seen as a mere punchline. And through it all, he promised everyone in his own daring way, "I promise I'll haunt you." Somewhere else, Taylor was returning to his roots, though not without reluctance and haunted memories. The old farmhouse whose white paint blistered and peeled like old regrets had stood for decades, a tired giant settled into slumber. This house had cradled the dreams, secrets, and misadventures of his ancestors who had tilled the land, raised soybeans and children, and nurtured mysteries too numerous to recount. Taylor had avoided this place for years, ever since that last chaotic Thanksgiving filled with too many meddling aunts and sticky-fingered cousins. Yet, on a stormy evening, under a sky roiling with indigo and steel gray, Taylor found himself pulling open his car door, stepping onto a porch where creaking steps and a live oak with twisted branches whispered omens of the past. The wind tugged at his coat as if trying to dissuade him, and a rusty gate swung open with a haunting wail before slamming shut. Gritting his teeth against old memories, Taylor moved forward and pushed open the heavy front door, stepping into a legacy that was at once intimidating and achingly familiar. Elsewhere in the sprawling urban sprawl of Los Angeles, Mick was beginning his day at a temp agency. He flipped down his shades as he checked the time on his phone, a bit early by his own standards, but he secretly enjoyed the hope of impressing someone with his punctuality. At first glance, one might overlook the frayed sleeves on his worn jacket or the way he hunched slightly, reminiscent of a wary, threatened dog, but observers soon noted him, and his quiet presence captured more than a passing glance. Today, a curly-haired woman with brilliant green eyes stepped forward, handing him a calendar starkly empty of shifts. "How about driving?" she asked gently, suggesting he make use of his bike in hopes that an opportunity might arise. With a soft grunt of thanks, Mick accepted the hint. Outside on the baking sidewalk, he rifled through his jacket pocket to confirm the bus fare still clung loosely, and he chuckled quietly at the notion of how close he was to being full-time screwed. Mick's modest apartment lay just south of Boyle Heights, where he rented from an elderly couple whose windows were perpetually open and whose cockatiels chirped at every arrival. As he rolled his bicycle up to his door, he was met by the blinking eyes of birds as pale as yellowed newsprint, their faded orange patches muted to pink. Inside, an empty fridge and the quiet hum of August winds blending with the stale air reminded him of both isolation and possibility. His desk sagged under the weight of unopened envelopes, mostly stamped final notice, yet he carefully tossed another onto the effusive pile. On hot LA nights, he would venture out on his bike, riding through streets where headlight beams revealed melting skyscrapers, lamp posts lining avenues that stretched into impossible distances. On one such ride, he veered off his usual path to Alvarado Street, where the rhythmic geometry of egg-eyed spotlights and the savory tang of food trucks replaced the familiar urban solitude. It was there, between bites of a $2 tamale and scanning the sparse crowd, that he encountered a familiar face leaning against his handlebars. Someone with headphones draped around a neck as if suspended in time. Not far away, Mara was battling her own inner demons and dreams. With her jet-black hair flowing and a blue ribbon carefully tied around her braids, she defended the quiet of a library by forcefully slapping a shelved book and shouting, "Stop making those sounds!" Enraged customers gathered around, some calling her a freak. As the chaos unfolded, 3 figures would haunt her memory from that tumultuous day. A gaunt woman behind thin, cruel glasses who had accused Mara of igniting a controversial section on Hinduism. A man in a mustard yellow scarf who cursed pyro as flames erupted from the book after her strike. And Aiden, whose silent questions over what she had meant when she whispered, "Can't take the heat," persisted long after. At her parents' rundown ranch near Lone Mountain, where she later would work with Aiden on a bot project, she always replied coolly, "You know I hate saying things twice." It wasn't until after graduation, while sitting in a late-night booth at a Sonic drive-in with her old Toyota pointed north towards Salt Lake City, that she finally confided everything. "Listen, I love your insane ideas," she told him softly, "but I never wanted to set the world on fire." The next day, a text from Aiden read, "Good luck, North. Write me when you find work." Her journey took her from a week in Salt Lake to the eccentric fringes of Missoula and eventually further north into Spokane. Along the way, while studying dusty classifieds on a vegan co-op bulletin board, a young man behind the counter recognized her. "The Mara?" he asked, as if she were destined to set the world ablaze with her talent, although she quietly dismissed the notion as not really. The faint aroma of burnt soy milk that clung to her car hinted at the passions and failures in her wake. After 8 winding hours on I-90, nearly mistaken for someone signing into Canada, Mara found herself near Bellingham at her grandpa's property. Once a sprawling homestead, now reduced to overgrown acres and remnants of doomed subdivisions, it was here her grandfather had devoted his days, after his failing health, to building an enormous robot affectionately dubbed Art. "I won't say it needs you," he wheezed in a raspy voice as she arrived unexpectedly on his creaking stoop. "But I'm not too proud to ask." With a firm embrace that conveyed both love and the weight of unspoken memories, they shared a tender moment before old temperaments cooled as quickly as flames. On weekends in Bellingham, Mara mingled with bands that played loud, spontaneous shows in basement venues, their music echoing the raw energy of a time when every note carried dreams of revolution. It was during these nights that she sometimes caught sight of Aiden, his dark hair unadorned by dye, his eyes as real as if carved from midnight, assembling disassembled amplifiers and battered cables with a nonchalant precision that belied his creative brilliance. In these moments, the past and present intertwined as he recalled the days when he first questioned her cryptic "can't take the heat" remark. His curiosity, once burning fiercely, had softened over the years into a quiet resignation. Later still, at twilight on a cool evening, Mick found himself crossing paths with Aiden in a small graffiti-splattered park in Alvarado. The two old acquaintances, one still scrubbing memories with each pedal stroke, the other leaning back on a weathered bench with eyes fixed on the dark branches above, settled into conversation. Aiden, whose look was a mix of youthful defiance and wistful nostalgia, spoke in brief bursts about college life, dorm relics, and pizza leftovers that reminded him more of dreams he'd lost than those he still nurtured. He confided, "Half my class moved to Seattle for jobs, but I'm sticking it out here." Mick, his thoughts adrift between busted tamale wrappers and old band demos, mumbled about the uncertainties of the future. Their conversation naturally drifted to Mara. "You remember Mara?" Mick eventually asked, his tone tinged with both longing and regret. Aiden replied, almost without missing a beat. "She called me from Alaska last year." The mention of her name evoked a cascade of memories, a flurry of smoky nights, unfinished projects, and lyrics burned into the heart with every farewell. As darkness deepened around them, and the neon glow of distant street lamps gave shape to forgotten roads, Mick and Aiden journeyed together on their bikes along quiet overpasses and empty lanes. They paused under a sodium-lit night sky where the silhouettes of broken fences and abandoned skate parks held echoes of punk shows long past. Aiden, tugging at his t-shirt sleeve to reveal a raw red tattoo reminiscent of flames, mused, "She wrote last week, from someplace I can't even pronounce in Quebec." Mick's fingers traced the contours of his regrowing shaved scalp as he asked softly, "What'd she say?" Aiden's voice wavered like a refrain. "Nothing burns so bright as long as this," leaving his sentence suspended between bitter truth and hopeful irony. Their conversation, interlaced with fragments of music, art, and memories of shared days, wove together the tapestry of lives defined by both failure and fierce perseverance. The night eventually gave way to early dawn, and as the first light brushed over Mick's modest home near Boyle Heights once more, he found himself alone with his thoughts. Empty envelopes, a frayed jacket stuffed with memories of hot nights and colder mornings, and a lingering hope that perhaps somewhere Mara's new chapter might cross paths again with his own. Miles away, Mara, having gathered courage from countless unfinished adventures, drove into the uncertain horizon. At a roadside booth under a gentle canopy of blue light, a curly-haired agency girl softly beckoned, "Mick?" Her voice was as unexpected as it was gentle, cutting through the haze of countless abandoned dreams. For a brief moment, the past, with all its wild ideas and burned matches, found a bridge to the present. Weeks later, amidst conversations with old friends like Bert, a man who, despite the passing years, still remembered the raw, unruly spirit of their punk heyday, Mick found solace in reconnecting over shared reminiscences, whispered promises, and the quiet rituals of dropping by a familiar office called Startfire. In an exchange laden with bittersweet humor, Aiden remembered their days recording demos for a band called Radiation Angel, while Mick acknowledged that printing those old demos was like trying to hold back a flood of memories no one really wanted to relive. And as they parted ways with promises to visit and create, Mick realized that their lives, though scarred by disappointments and unfinished projects, still held the potential for new beginnings. In the twilight of endless possibilities, as families intertwined through whispered secrets, rebellious pranks, and the ever-present march of time, each of them, Audrey, Jay, and Mona, Garrett, Taylor, Mick, Mara, Aiden, and even Bert, continued to chase their personal ghosts and dreams. Their collective narrative was written in both bright flashes and darkened alleys, a testament to the enduring truth that every generation carries its own adventure, its own promise of renewal. And in that delicate space between memory and possibility, as dusk melted into dawn, they all found that the journey, much like the ghostly echoes of a family secret or the soft murmur of a tamale shared on a cool night, was the real work of living. Thus, as the final note of another long day faded into the murmurs of early morning, the intertwined lives of these dreamers forged ahead, each carrying forward a legacy of passion, resilience, and the enduring beauty of unfinished stories. Audrey had never considered herself a true time traveler, even though life, for her, always felt like flipping through a well-worn book. Moments merged together effortlessly, memories of the past blending with visions of the future. One cool Tuesday morning, as gentle clouds draped soft shadows over the kitchen table, Audrey discovered a family secret that would forever alter the rhythm of her days. In the sunlit kitchen, her mother, Margaret, was busy kneading dough as fine flour danced around her hands. The familiar warmth of the room was interrupted when Audrey, reaching for the glass of orange juice, accidentally nudged a photo album off the counter. It landed on the floor with a soft thud, its pages opening to reveal vibrant pictures of wide-eyed children from decades long past. Entranced, Audrey picked up a snapshot of a little girl with curly hair and laughing eyes, asking, "Who are these kids?" With quiet determination, Margaret paused her work, adjusted her glasses, and replied cryptically, "I think you know." As Audrey studied the photograph, a sudden recognition struck her. The freckles on the girl's face, scattered like starlight across her nose, kindled memories she could not place. Then it hit her. "This is me," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with confusion and wonder. Yet she knew the picture was from another era, a moment lost in time. Margaret simply smiled and returned to her bread, leaving the silence as an invitation to explore not only the secrets hidden within the album, but every hidden story nestled in their old Victorian house. Somewhere above, behind creaking floors and faded wallpaper on the third floor, lay an attic full of trunks and boxes labeled with names whispered about in hushed tones. Each box beckoned to Audrey, promising untold stories that once connected generations in cycles of adventure and intimate wonder. This unexpected discovery set her heart in motion, not as a traveler between hours, but as one embarking on a journey into the depths of her lineage. Far from that gentle domestic mystery, another story unfolded under a black sky speckled with indifferent stars. On a weather-beaten rooftop, Jay and Mona lay side by side, savoring the fragile moments before night surrendered to an approaching storm. As rain sizzled against the city's skin, Mona's finger traced constellations in the dark. "What's that one?" she asked, half in jest. Jay squinted at her, more enchanted by the way her hair fanned out like an untamed halo over the gravel than by the mysteries of the night sky, and said, Human with unfinished projects?" Mona's laugh, bright enough to capture starlight, teased, "Is that what you call your autobiography?" Their banter dripped with the bittersweet recognition that life was filled with delightful misfires and catastrophic moments alike. In the charged silence that followed, Jay suggested, "What if we write something together right here, right now?" Inspired by the shapes overhead, they began to craft a tale of heroes, distant worlds, and unfinished dreams, until the rain eventually forced them to descend, sodden yet enlivened by the creative spark they had kindled amidst the night. Not far away, in a memory of his own tormented past, young Garrett had once discovered the strange power of haunting. When he was 10, the rumor of a ghost that toyed with antique toys sent shivers through his small town. In daring whispers, local children challenged each other to creep up to Aaron's room at night, leaving windows cracked open and lights burning bright, much like the ghost that penned unsettling messages on brittle, brown paper plane. One scrawled note shouted, "What's for dinner?" and caused uproar among lunch ladies. Another innocently demanded, "Too loud," as it tumbled from an overhead light. Too timid to claim either credit or craftily protest the exclusion from future pranks, Garrett began using these mysterious paper planes to join clubs and skirt around traditional school obstacles. When the geometry club barred him from borrowing their prized protractors because they were members only, a mocking email arrived addressed to Aaron, "Do they bite?" Aaron's response was simple yet defiant. "Yes, of course they bite." That offering became a symbol, a secret nod to young Garrett that marked his transition from ghostly whispers to earning 8 AP credits and eventually a scholarship that whisked him away to honors college. In his confident farewell to naysayers, he would later promise, "I promise I'll haunt you," marking a metamorphosis from fearful prankster to a determined creator of his destiny. Elsewhere, Taylor wrestled with the ghosts of his past as he returned to the old farmhouse, a dilapidated structure that had outlasted generations. The farmhouse, with its sagging frame and blistered white paint, had always been a silent witness to his family's shared labor and secret griefs. After years away, never since that fateful Thanksgiving filled with too many opinions and unruly relatives, Taylor pulled his car to a stop beneath an expansive sky darkening with roiling clouds. As he hesitated at the door, a flickering light in the front window beckoned him inside. A giant crooked live oak loomed nearby, its gnarled branches whispering tales of a mysterious presence, rumored by his parents to be something hidden and hungry in its rusty limbs. Dismissing it as mere superstition, Taylor stepped forward through the creaking porch and, with a deep breath of both trepidation and resolve, pushed open the heavy front door to confront the memories locked within. In another corner of this patchwork tapestry of lives, Mick found himself in the sterile waiting area of a temp agency. Standing by the window, he adjusted his frayed shades and checked his phone, knowing that arriving early might impress someone if only they could notice beyond his faded sleeves and hunched posture. Today, a curly-haired woman with striking green eyes approached him, handing over a calendar devoid of any scheduled shifts. "How about driving?" she suggested gently, hinting that his bike might at least secure him a small gig. Grumbling a quiet thanks, Mick stepped out onto the sun-warmed pavement, checking his bus fare still jingling in his pocket. His journey that day was emblematic of his life in Los Angeles. A series of uncertain rides where the city's magic lay in its transitory connections. Mick's humble apartment, tucked just south of Boyle Heights and rented from an amicable old couple with ever-watchful cockatiels, bore the marks of a life in constant transition. When he arrived on his bicycle, the cockatiels, with their soft newsprint yellow plumage and faded orange cheek patches, regarded him with a curious blink. In the sparse interior of his apartment, an empty fridge and dusty envelope stamped "Final Notice" shared silent testimony to unfulfilled promises. In the sultry nights, he would venture out on his bike, watching Los Angeles transform into a blur of headlights, elongated shadows, and melting urban silhouettes. On one such night, after a ride that took him along familiar avenues and timid street corners, Mick encountered a stranger leaning against his handlebars, a face that stirred echoes of a forgotten past. It was a moment when unfinished thoughts manifested as a friend from long ago, a reminder that even in the throes of personal setbacks, camaraderie could emerge unexpectedly. That friend was Aiden, a companion who had once shared dreams, experiments in robotics, and the restless energy of youth. Their meeting was marked by gentle ribbing and recollections of half-burned passions, of bands that once roared from basements, of late-night snacks and stolen time, and of plans made with the reckless hope that nothing could ever really break them apart. "Mick, you still around?" asked Aiden, his voice a mix of surprise and familiarity, as if unveiling layers of memories hidden under years of wandering. They strolled along Alvarado Park, recalling fragments of past exploits and the bittersweet truth that neither time nor regret could ever completely bury old dreams. Aiden, with a raw red tattoo blazing across his visible skin, a mark of his middle name and an emblem of what remained unforgotten, dropped hints about Mara, the friend they both carried in heart and memory. Mara's story was one of transformation amid heartbreak and adventure. In her own journey northward from the familiar chaos of Las Vegas, she had encountered towns where every glance, every statement carried the weight of someone trying to reinvent herself. Whether it was the quirky compliment from a kid behind a county co-op's counter or the smell of burnt soy milk that trailed her steps, Mara had embraced each twist of fate as an opportunity to shed her past. She recalled the day, seated at a Sonic drive-in with her old Toyota pointed north, when she told her friend, "Listen, I love your insane ideas, but I never wanted to set the world on fire." That night, as her phone buzzed with a heartfelt message from Aiden wishing her luck up north, Mara realized that no matter how far she traveled, from Salt Lake City to Missoula and finally to Spokane, her past would forever pedal alongside her like a determined shadow. Yet with every new step, she wove fragments of her story into a tapestry of hope and gentle rebellion. The paths of Mick, Aiden, and Mara, along with all those whose lives had intersected over faded photographs, whispered legends, and midnight rides, converged in the vibrant cityscape, a place where memories danced amid neon glows and ancient buildings absorbed modern aspirations. One summer evening, while Mick Aiden paused beneath a fading overpass, the urban sprawl around them dissolving into spectral wisps of light and sound, they contemplated the odd, bittersweet nature of existence. Between shared jokes, fading echoes of ramped-up bands, and the raw admission of unfinished dreams, they acknowledged that every lost connection, every ghost from their past, was but a stepping stone toward rebuilding what had been left behind. Aiden, his eyes twinkling with both hope and resignation, murmured, "You should drop by sometime." Without missing a beat, he revealed that there was room at the Startfire office, a hint perhaps that the past could be transformed into a future crafted by unity and creative resolve. As night deepened, the city offered one final farewell. Mick found himself back at his apartment where the cockatiel still greeted him with soft, questioning eyes, and the empty fridge whispered of both loss and possibility. Somewhere between the remnants of tamale cheese on his fingers and the fleeting neon sketches of old friends, he realized that despite all the unfinished projects and half-spoken promises, their lives were interwoven by the undeniable force of creativity and connection. In that moment, Mick, Aiden, Mara, and all those who had dared to dream beneath ancient oaks, flickering lights, and hauntingly familiar photographs understood one timeless truth. Every ending marked the start of another story. And in the quiet murmur of the night, as the first hints of dawn crept over a city built of memories and hope, they stepped forward, ready to write the next chapter, together. Thus, the tapestry of their lives, stitched together by secrets, late-night confessions, and quiet revelations, found both a beginning and an end in the light of a coming day. A day where every ghost, every shadow, would eventually yield to the unwavering glow of something real and enduring. On a cool Tuesday morning, Audrey discovered that her life was more entwined with time than she had ever suspected. Though she never saw herself as a time traveler, Audrey possessed a rare gift. She could step through moments as easily as flipping pages in a well-worn book. In the soft light that filtered through the clouds as delicate shadows danced on the kitchen table, fate intervened when a long-given family secret was unveiled. Her mother, Margaret, stood at the counter in the sunlit kitchen, kneading dough as tiny flour particles caught the light. In that quiet moment, when Audrey reached for a glass of orange juice, her elbow accidentally knocked a mysterious photo album from the counter. It tumbled to the floor and fell open, revealing vibrant snapshots of wide-eyed children from decades past. "Who are these kids?" Audrey asked as she picked up a snapshot of a little girl with curly hair and laughing, shining eyes. Margaret paused in her dough kneading and peered over her glasses. "I think you know," she said cryptically. Audrey stared at the photograph, feeling an inexplicable pull. There was something hauntingly familiar about the way the girl's freckles were scattered across her nose, like distant constellations Audrey had seen before. And then it hit her. "This is me!" she exclaimed. Though the photo clearly belonged to a different era, Margaret simply smiled, returning to her work as if her quiet silence invited Audrey to delve deeper into the secrets not only of the album but of their very old Victorian house. Up in the attic, hidden behind faded wallpaper and the silence of forgotten decades, rested trunks and boxes bearing names spoken only in hushed whispers. Each item tugged at Audrey's imagination, weaving together stories of her ancestors in a tapestry of adventure, wonder, and mystery. In that moment, Audrey began a journey not through time itself, but through generations unknowingly bound by shared dreams and untold histories. Far from Audrey's unfolding discovery, on a rooftop under a vast black sky spangled with stars, Jay and Mona were composing their own nocturnal narrative. They lay side by side, the quiet of the night, punctuated only by the distant rumble of a helicopter and the soft hum of traffic below. Mona pointed at a peculiar cluster of stars and asked, "What's that one?" Jay squinted at the sky, but found his attention drawn more to the way Mona's hair fanned out on the gravel. "Ah, human with unfinished projects?" he teased. Mona grinned, her teeth catching the starlight. "Is that what you call your autobiography?" "More like my disaster piece," he replied with a chuckle. As his arm brushed against hers, a sense of shared intimacy settled between them. "What if," Mona mused thoughtfully, "we wrote something together, something made up, not written by the universe, but born of us?" Jay's heart skipped a beat at the idea. "What if we start right here, right now?" he asked. Their voices intertwined with the rustle of night as they constructed fragments of a story from the silhouettes overhead, tales of fierce heroes in distant worlds, until a sudden downpour drove them indoors, yet leaving them satisfied and exhilarated for the creative journey ahead. Elsewhere, when he was just 10, Garrett had already dared to conjure ghosts of his own making. Intrigued by whispered legends of a spirit that rattled antique toys in the dead of night, he began writing haunting notes on scraps of brown paper, folding them into paper planes that glided mysteriously out from shadowy corners. In one note, carried on a plane into the cafeteria, a scrawled message reading, "What's for dinner?" caused an uproar among the lunch ladies, while another note proclaimed, "Too loud!" When discovered dangling from a light fixture, too timid to claim credit for these mischievous pranks or complain about being left out of future mischief, Garrett let the paper planes work their magic. They opened doors to clubs and even helped him dodge stringent applications, as when the Geometry Club, notorious for its members-only policy on protractors, responded with a teasing email. "Do they bite?" "Yes," his friend Aaron had joked. "Of course they bite." Over time, as he advanced to senior year with enough AP credits to earn a scholarship to a prestigious honors college far from home, Garrett's promise to everyone remained simple yet enigmatic. "I promise I'll haunt you." Not far in memory or place from Garrett's playful hauntings, Taylor found himself drawn back to the old farmhouse, a relic that had loomed over his family's history far longer than any of them. The farmhouse sagged on its time-worn foundation like a weary giant, its white paint blistered and peeling. It was a monument to whispered family lore, ancestors who had tilled the land and nurtured children under its creaking beams. Taylor hadn't returned in years. Too many aunts with opinions, too many cousins with sticky fingers and intrusive ways. Still, something about the farmhouse, with its eerie live oak whose crooked branches were rumored to shelter dark, hidden things, pulled him back. One stormy evening, Taylor stepped from his car into the chill, under an expansive sky darkening with rolling indigo and steel-gray clouds. A solitary light flickered in the front window, daring him to enter. The ancient oak's branches scraped ominously against the roof, sounding like brittle claws in the wind. With a nervous laugh, Taylor dismissed the noises as nothing more than an old tree playing tricks on an impressionable mind. Yet every creak of the porch steps and every gust that whipped around him stoked memories of loss and part of himself that he hadn't reclaimed. Taking a deep breath, Taylor gritted his teeth against the past and pushed open the heavy doorway, stepping into a house that promised to keep its long-held secrets and perhaps, now, offer some answers. In another part of the city, Mick found himself standing outside a temp agency early in the morning. He flipped down his shades and checked his phone, arriving deliberately early in hope of making the best impression possible, even if his disheveled appearance and shadowed posture gave the impression of a man perpetually on edge. His attempt at attentiveness did not go unnoticed. A curly-haired woman with brilliant green eyes approached him, handing him a calendar devoid of any shifts. "How about driving?" she suggested gently. "You've got a bike, maybe something will come up." Mick merely grunted thanks as he stepped out onto the baking sidewalk. Checking the bus fare still jingling in his jacket pocket, he wondered how much farther he would drift into the realms of uncertainty before he found stability once again. Mick's small apartment located just south of Boyle Heights was a reflection of his transient life. He rented from an elderly couple whose cockatiels chirped incessantly through open windows. The birds eyed him warily as he rolled his bicycle to the door. Inside, an empty fridge mocked his loneliness while August winds snaked their way through the house, scattering dust in the fading light. At his sagging desk, envelopes stamped with final notice served as constant reminders of debts and deadlines. Yet on hot nights, Mick sought solace in riding through Los Angeles, where headlights blurred realities into neon dreams, and every long avenue promised escape. On one such ride, Mick veered toward Alvarado between 2nd and 3rd, where bright egg-eyed spotlights traced geometric patterns on trailer walls and the aroma of food trucks mingled with the cool night air. It was there, among forgotten friends and faded memories, that he encountered a familiar figure leaning against his handlebars. A not-quite friend with headphones draped around his neck, as if stitched into his identity from years past. Mick peeled away foil from a stray piece of cheese, waiting for the smoke of memory to clear, aware that perhaps this meeting was part of the fragile thread that wove through each chapter of his life. Elsewhere on the winding highways of life, Mara emerged as a force to be reckoned with. At 17, she once patrolled the quiet aisles of a library when a shelved book sparked her fury. With jet black hair cascading down her shoulders, Mara tied a blue ribbon around her braid, and before anyone could stop her, she struck the book and shouted, "Stop making those sounds!" Enraged customers gathered, hurling insults such as, "Stop that freak!" among the clamor. Mara would never forget 3 individuals from that day. The woman with thin, cruel glasses who accused Mara of igniting the Hinduism section. The man in a mustard yellow scarf who cried "Pyro" as flames burst from the book. And Aiden, the one who would later probe her with endless questions about her cryptic remark, "Can't take the heat." At his parents' rundown ranch near Lone Mountain while working on their bot project, Aiden repeatedly asked about her meaning. "You know, I hate saying things twice," she would reply, leaving him in a state of bewilderment until, after graduation and years of half-answered questions, she finally confided her truth. Driving out of Las Vegas for good, leaving behind painful memories of high school pranks, broken promises, and burning geometry proofs, Mara sat at a Sonic drive-in with Aiden. Her old Toyota was pointed north, toward Salt Lake City, and an uncertain future. "Listen, I love your insane ideas," she told him softly, "but I never wanted to set the world on fire." The next day, Aiden texted, "Good luck, North. Write me when you find work." Mara's journey led her from the heady bustle of Salt Lake to the cool detachment of Missoula's coffeehouse stiffs, and eventually further north to Spokane. On dusty highways and amidst flickering roadside neon, Mara carried with her the flame of rebellion and memories of a past that both haunted and propelled her. 8 hours later, by Interstate 90, Mara nearly found herself crossing into Canada by accident. In the shadow of her past, she also revisited family history near Bellingham. There, everything Grandpa owned, overgrown acres, ramshackle subdivisions, had become a quiet battleground of memory. Since his heart had betrayed him, he had invested his remaining time and money into building an enormous robot in his timbered workshop. A contraption he affectionately named AR. The robot, a sprawling monument assembled from scraps and wire, had grown inexplicably larger after Grandpa's surgery. "I won't say it needs you," he wheezed when Mara unexpectedly arrived at his stoop near dusk, "but I'm not too proud to let you help." Though their embrace was brief and the unspoken tensions thick, Mara recognized that art symbolized not only technical ambition, but the enduring legacy of unfinished dreams. During weekends in Bellingham, Mara rode with bands that still played loud and loose in dusty basements, where memories of old shows and reckless nights danced like sparks. There, amid half-dissembled amplifiers and tangled cables, she caught sight of Aiden, now a young man cloaked in a crumpled hoodie and surrounded by equipment that bore the marks of time. His presence was a reminder of how little some things changed, even as they moved on. Back in the city, fate continued to weave its tangled web when Mick's path crossed again with Aiden's. One balmy evening, as neon lights battled the encroaching darkness, Mick caught sight of Aiden, a ghost from the past with freckles that traced constellations on his face and unruly copper hair that seemed to live and burn all on its own. Aiden approached, eyes wide with familiar recognition. "Mick frickin' Sullivan! On a bike," he exclaimed. Mick exhaled a breath that carried both laughter and resignation. "You were hallucinating in a hardware aisle last time you said that," he replied, the two friends sharing a moment of nostalgic banter that bridged years in silence. They wandered through spirals of grease and memories until they found refuge on a bench in Alvarado Park. Amid the graffiti-tagged handball courts and the hum of a city that never quite slept, Aiden and Mick began to trace the outlines of their shared past. Old band demos, the reckless energy of youth, and talks of building death ray machines and robots that never quite came to be. Mick hesitated before mentioning Mara. "You remember Mara?" he asked quietly. "Stopped trying," Aiden said almost immediately, recalling her call from Alaska last year. They fell into reflective silence, the weight of lost opportunities and faded promises settling over them like the night itself. As the hours stretched into early morning, Aiden and Mick found themselves riding together through streets that led from Koreatown to Hollywood forever, empty overpasses where the only sound was the echo of their quiet confessions. At a stop under sodium arc lamps that bathed the concrete in a surreal orange glow, Aiden revealed a raw red tattoo, an emblem of past passions and unspoken losses. "She wrote last week. From some place in Quebec I can't even pronounce," Aiden murmured. Mick gently ran his fingers over his own receding hair and the scars of memory, asking, "What'd she say?" "Nothing burns so bright as long as this," Aiden replied, his words more questions than answers. Old towers rose around them like monuments to forgotten dreams, even as the two friends recognized that the past, with all its unfinished business, still defined who they were. On another day, as August broke gray over the old couple's house in Boyle Heights, Mick returned home to a quiet scene. Cockatiels stirring in the morning light, and an empty fridge that hummed with memories of better times. He dressed methodically, lacing up his boots, when a familiar voice, soft and unexpected, called his name in a moment of tender vulnerability. "Mick?" the voice whispered. It was from a curly-haired agency girl who had once handed him that empty calendar, whose eyes now held a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the harsh city around them. The whispered words, "At least, that's one thing you'll remember. Tell Circuit Breaker bye from me," floated amidst the murmur of car speakers and the distant burst of fireworks off Blue Diamond Road. Moments later, as her car roared away into the after-midnight darkness and the city exhaled another day of unfinished business, Mick felt both lost and strangely hopeful. Later still, as Mick nibbled the last remnants of a tamale under the neon glow of streets slick with memories, a familiar figure emerged from the haze. Bert, a ghost from another past, stepped into view. "Bert," Mick called. Bert's face, half lit by neon, conveyed both surprise and the comfort of old friendship. They exchanged awkward embraces and recounted memories of wild nights with punk bands and reckless shows that once filled their hearts with fire. "This feels like powers colliding again," Bert said softly, and Mick could only nod, acknowledging that sometimes the weight of every past misadventure and every burst of youthful passion was all that truly mattered. In the months that followed, as the city's pulse slowed into quieter rhythms, Mick and Aiden continued their reluctant reunion. On one crisp evening, beneath the wan light of street lamps that cast long shadows over vacant lots, Aiden reconnected with old band demos, forgotten promises, and even the enigma of Mara. Their conversation ebbed and flowed between jokes about robot death ray machines and sincere reflections on a youth spent chasing unfinished dreams. Aiden eventually offered, "You should drop by sometime. We've got room at the Startfire office." His tone conveyed both invitation and wistfulness, a silent acknowledgement that despite the tumult of the past, there was still hope for something new to ignite. As the night gave way to the soft light of dawn, each character, Audrey, Jay, Mona, Taylor, Mick, Mara, and Aiden, found themselves at the crossroads of memory and possibility, their lives, stitched together by moments of discovery, friendship, and the enduring lure of unfinished dreams, reminded them that even when the past seems to haunt every corner, it also lights a way forward. In that shared silence, beneath fading neon and whispered goodbyes, they understood that the moments between jobs, between heartaches, and between lost opportunities were not gaps at all, but the very fabric of the lives they were still unfolding. And as the city slowly awoke to another uncertain day, they carried on, each step a quiet promise that the fire of yesterday might yet spark the creation of tomorrow. Audrey never considered herself a time traveler, yet she possessed a remarkable gift, the ability to live in the present while flicking effortlessly through cherished memories and hopeful daydreams, as if turning the pages of a treasured book. One crisp Tuesday morning, soft clouds draped over the kitchen table like whispered secrets, and Audrey unwittingly uncovered a family mystery that would forever alter her understanding of time and legacy. In the bright kitchen, her mother Margaret was busy kneading dough as tiny motes of flour danced in the warm sunlight. As Audrey reached to pour herself some orange juice, her elbow brushed a photo album off the counter. It landed open on the floor, revealing vibrant photographs of wide-eyed children from distant, almost forgotten eras. Picking up a snapshot of a little girl with bouncing curly hair and sparkling eyes, Audrey asked, "Who are these kids?" Margaret paused, adjusting her glasses before replying with a mysterious smile. "I think you know." Audrey studied the image. The scattered freckles on the girl's face formed patterns reminiscent of constellations that had always haunted her dreams. A sudden shock rippled through her as she gasped, "This is me!" Though the photograph belonged to a time that seemed impossibly remote, Margaret's knowing silence urged her to delve deeper. It was not just the album that beckoned her, but the entire weathered Victorian house, steeped in long hidden secrets. Somewhere in the attic, cloaked behind faded wallpaper and heavy layers of silence, lay trunks and boxes labeled with names spoken only in whispers. That morning, Audrey's journey began, not a journey through literal time, but an intimate exploration of generations bound together by adventure and wonder. A quest to rediscover herself through the legacy of those who came before. High above in another part of the sprawling city, on a dusky rooftop beneath a star-flecked black sky, Jay and Mona lay side by side. The night was pregnant with possibilities, the cool air quietly shifting as clouds gathered and rain murmured in the distance. Mona's finger traced a cluster of stars, forming surreal shapes, and she inquired, "What's that one?" Jay squinted at the sky and at Mona's hair, which spilled softly across the gravel, and half-jokingly replied, "A human with unfinished projects?" Mona's grin shone like starlight. That what you call your autobiography, she teased. More like my disaster piece, Jay chuckled, then fell into a companionable silence as his arm brushed hers in a warm, reassuring gesture. In that tender moment, accompanied by the distant hum of a helicopter and the far-off murmur of city traffic, Mona suggested, what if we wrote something together? Not something dictated by fate, but a story made up by us. Jay's heart skipped a beat as he carried memories of abandoned screenplays and half-finished short stories, and after a thoughtful pause, he murmured, let's start now, right here. Together they began to conjure fragments of a story, a tale of fierce heroes and distant worlds, superimposing vivid images onto the night sky until the pattering rain forced them indoors, still buzzing with the thrill of creation. Not so far away, a young boy named Garrett had, at the age of 10, crafted his first mischievous ghost story. In a neighborhood where whispers claimed an unseen ghost rattled antique toys and dared kids to perform wild challenges, Garrett discovered a peculiar ritual. Tales abounded of a spectral figure leaving handwritten notes on crumpled, brown-papered planes. One message read, "What's for dinner?" sending shockwaves through the school cafeteria. Another declared, "Too loud during assemblies." Too intimidated to claim credit, yet too clever to resist, Garrett began using the paper planes to weave his way into clubs, bypassing strict applications with a touch of whimsy and mischief. When the exclusive geometry club snubbed him for members-only activities, a cheeky email reply emerged. Do they bite? His quiet rebellion eventually earned him a place among peers, and by senior year, loaded with AP credits and a scholarship to a prestigious honors college, he would promise, I promise I'll haunt you, a promise both literal and whispered in the quiet corners of memory. Farther afield, Taylor approached the long-neglected farmhouse of his childhood, a tired, sagging relic with blistered white paint that seemed to weep its own history. Having avoided this place since a particularly painful Thanksgiving, Taylor couldn't decipher whether his absence was due to bitter family disputes or the haunting loss of part of his own identity. Under a sky slowly darkening with gathering indigo and steel-gray clouds, he stepped from his car. A single light flickered in a window as if daring him to confront the past. A massive, crooked live oak, its branches scraping the worn roof like brittle claws, loomed ominously. Though his parents had once whispered of an unwholesome presence dwelling in those limbs, Taylor laughed nervously, attributing the noise merely to an old tree. Yet as the rusty gate protested with a creaking wail and the weathered porch steps groaned under his weight, a deep resolve overtook him. With a slow breath and clenched teeth, Taylor pushed open the heavy front door, ready to face the secrets waiting inside. Elsewhere in the city, Mick arrived at a temporary job agency, flipping down his shades and checking his phone, hoping his early arrival might impress despite his worn and downtrodden look. His mismatched attire, a shirt with frayed sleeves and a hunched posture, betrayed his inner turbulence. A curly-haired woman with vibrant green eyes greeted him by handing over a blank calendar. How about driving? She suggested softly. You got a bike, maybe. Something will come up. Mick grunted his thanks and stepped onto the baking sidewalk, fumbling through his jacket pocket to check for bus fare, wondering ruefully just how close he teetered on the brink. Mick's modest apartment lay just south of Boyle Heights, in a building managed by an elderly couple whose cockatiels scrutinized him from open windows each time he arrived. Inside, the empty fridge whirled with August heat, while dust danced in the last fading light. His sagging desk, crowded with envelopes stamped final notice, served as a constant reminder of debts and lost opportunities. Yet on oppressively hot nights, Mick found solace on his bicycle pedaling through Los Angeles, a city where moving lights sketched secrets on downtown buildings and long avenues unfurled like endless stories. One such night, instead of heading home, he veered onto Alvarado between 2nd and 3rd, where bright spotlights projected vivid geometries upon trailer walls and the tantalizing aroma from food trucks mingled with the night air. With $2 traded for a melting tamale, Mick savored its richness while scanning the sparse crowd for echoes of old friends, only to confront a fleeting figure leaning against his handlebars, a friend from days long gone, headphones draped around his neck like a familiar talisman. In that small encounter, Mick wondered if perhaps these transient moments bridged the gaps between jobs, between fractured parts of his life. In another sphere of this intertwined tapestry, Mara, a fiercely determined 17-year-old with jet black hair tied with a blue ribbon, challenged the monotony of her world. One day, in a musty library, she struck a shelved book and shouted, "Stop making those sounds!" Her outburst drew a crowd of angry customers and harsh words. Among those in the throng, 3 figures etched themselves indelibly into her memory. a stern woman with thin, cruel glasses who accused her of igniting the section on Hinduism, a man in a mustard-yellow scarf exclaiming, "Pyro!" as the book's flames flickered, and Aiden, a boy who, over numerous encounters at his parents' dilapidated ranch near Lone Mountain, pestered her with questions about her enigmatic remark, "Can't take the heat." Though her initial retorts were clipped, "I hate repeating myself, the truth finally emerged after graduation." Sitting at a Sonic drive-in as Mara's old Toyota sat pointed north towards Salt Lake City and beyond, she confided, "Listen, I love your insane ideas, but I never meant to set the world on fire." The next day, Aiden texted her, "Good luck up north. Write me when you find work." Her journey led her first to Salt Lake, then to Missoula, where even eccentricity commanded wary admiration, and finally further north to Spokane. In a vegan co-op, while penning dusty classifieds, a young clerk greeted her with "the Mara," as if heralding her potential to spark change. Though she softly demurred, the scent of burnt soy milk and memories of past conflagrations clung to her as she stepped into her car. Some 8 hours later, Mara was driving down I-90 with Canada almost inadvertently in her rearview mirror, a reminder of fate's unpredictable turns. She recalled her grandpa's small plot near Bellingham, now overgrown with wild weeds as nature reclaimed space once lost to doomed subdivisions. In his later years, after his heart had weakened, he'd poured his remaining time into constructing an enormous robot he affectionately called Art, a project that grew as monstrously as a scrap metal tumor after his surgery. When Mara appeared unexpectedly on his doorstep one dusky evening, he managed a wheezy, "I won't say it needs you, but I'm not too proud to ask." And in a moment of tender vulnerability, they embraced fiercely. A farewell and an acceptance of legacy all in one. Weekends wove their own stories. Mara rode with bands that splintered out from Bellingham basements, where music, misadventures, and rebellion intermingled. Occasionally, she caught glimpses of Aiden amid piles of dismantled amplifiers and tangled cables, his carefree presence both a reminder and a promise, a reflection of a time when everything was possible. His quiet confidence, marked by hoodies and silent determination, resonated deeply with her own need for transformation. Yet in the midst of these narratives, life continued to blur the boundaries between old friendships and new beginnings. One cool starlit night, Mick found himself reconnecting with Aiden, a longtime friend whose presence was as familiar as a well-worn melody. Meeting unexpectedly in a park where graffiti and neon merged into urban art, Aiden greeted him warmly, "Mick freaking Sullivan on a bike." Their laughter and banter, catching up on college memories and past misadventures, flowed naturally amid the hum of the city. They wandered through concrete spaces where old bands played out in the recesses of memory, Radiation Angel, the raw pulse of teen trash punk, and moments when every chorus and shouted lyric had meant the world. Aiden confessed that though he once dreamed of building death ray machines, he now worked in software, a subtle nod to how dreams evolve. Their conversation paused as Mick recalled Mara, whose poetic messages and glimmering eyes once promised blazes of change. Aiden mentioned her recent call from a far-off place in Quebec. A familiar refrain, "Nothing burns so bright / as long / as this," echoing like an unfinished verse from an old song. In that moment, Mick and Aiden understood that life was a mosaic of connections, unfinished projects, and shared hopes, a symphony composed of laughter, regret, and the persistent pulse of dreams. As dawn crept across the city, Mick pedaled home once more. Later, he encountered Bert, a long-lost friend whose quiet reunion evoked memories of wild shows, rebellious gigs, and the time when nothing outside their amplifiers seemed impossible. Bert's awkward hug and gentle banter reminded Mick that sometimes past collisions of friendship and art still had the power to spark new beginnings. Their conversation, oscillating between nostalgia and cautious optimism, served as a reminder that even when everything seems fractured, hope endures. In the final tapestry of these intertwined lives, each character, Audrey, Jay, Mona, Garrett, Taylor, Mick, Aiden, Mara, and Bert, contributed a vibrant thread to the collective narrative. Whether unearthing family secrets in a dusty album, mapping dreams across starlit rooftops, or riding through neon-drenched streets in search of lost connections, they all navigated the spaces between past and future. Their journeys, marred by challenges yet illuminated by moments of brilliance, stand as testaments that life is a mosaic of unfinished dreams, resilient hope, and the eternal quest for self-discovery. As the sun rose over a city reawakened by the promise of new beginnings, each of them found solace in the knowledge that every ending harbored the seed of a new story, and that sometimes the space between jobs, memories, and bittersweet farewells was exactly where life's true magic resided. The morning light in the old Victorian house carried hints of magic, as though every sunbeam held a secret waiting to be uncovered. Audrey had never seen herself as a time traveler, yet her mind could shift seamlessly between recollections of a past that was almost tangible and vivid daydreams of an unwritten future. That Tuesday, as soft shadows danced across the kitchen table, Audrey discovered a family secret that would upend everything she thought she knew. In the warm, sunlit kitchen, her mother Margaret was busy kneading dough, the flour swirling like tiny galaxies around her hands. While reaching for a glass of orange juice, Audrey's elbow bumped a photo album off the counter. When it landed open on the floor, the album revealed vibrant snapshots of wide-eyed children from decades past. "Who are these kids?" she asked, carefully lifting a photograph of a little girl with bouncy curls and sparkling, laughing eyes. Margaret paused in her work, peered over her glasses, and answered softly, "I think you know." Audrey scrutinized the picture. There was an eerie, familiar quality in the freckles scattered across the girl's nose, much like constellations she'd seen in her own dreams. And then it struck her. "This is me," she cried out, though she knew the photo belonged to another time. Margaret offered a gentle, knowing smile, continuing her work as though her silence were an invitation for Audrey to delve deeper into the mystery of their shared past. A past hidden in attic trunks and faded labels, in whispered family stories and unexplained shadows in every corner of their home. Outside the somber echoes of memory and mystery, another story unfolded under a star-speckled sky. On a quiet urban rooftop, Jay and Mona lay side by side, the cool night air punctuated by the soft murmur of distant rain preparing to fall. Mona traced whimsical shapes among the stars, then asked playfully, "What's that one?" Jay squinted in response, more captivated by the way Mona's hair spilled over the gravel than by the constellations overhead. "A human with unfinished projects," he joked. Mona grinned, her teeth catching the starlight. "Is that what you call your autobiography?" she teased. "More like my disaster piece," he chuckled, before their silence grew comfortable again, just as a distant helicopter's drone merged with the hum of city life. In that quiet moment, Mona proposed something unexpected. "What if we wrote something? Together," she suggested, her eyes bright with anticipation. Jay's heart skipped a beat as he recalled old screenplays and half-finished stories, and with a shy, hopeful tone, he said, "What if we start right here, right now?" Under a canopy of unyielding stars, they began to craft their own tale, a tapestry of silhouettes, fierce heroes, and distant worlds, until the rain gently summoned them back indoors. Far away from rooftops and family kitchens, a 10-year-old Garrett discovered his passion for haunting memories with pen and paper. Inspired by ghost stories and the mysterious whispers of an antique toy that rattled in the night, Garrett began writing eerie messages on crumpled brown paper. He folded these notes into paper planes and let them glide mysteriously into the darkness of Aaron's room. One plane, fluttering onto a cafeteria table, read, "What's for dinner?" and caused a commotion among the lunch ladies. Another, tumbling from a light fixture during assembly, declared, "Too loud!" Instead of revealing his identity, Garrett cleverly let these mischievous pranks open unexpected doors for him, from joining clubs to receiving cryptic emails mocking the exclusivity of groups. His silent promise, "I promise I'll haunt you," would eventually shape a future where academic excellence and a scholarship to honors college replaced childhood mischief, transforming him into a man who understood that sometimes the legacy of a prank could evolve into something far more profound. In another corner of the sprawling narrative stood Taylor, burdened by memories of a family farmhouse that had outlived generations. The old structure, its white paint blistered and peeling, sagged like a tired giant against the relentless march of time. Taylor had not returned for years. Since that last Thanksgiving, crowded with aunts, sticky-fingered cousins, and unsaid goodbyes. Yet on this stormy afternoon, he found himself stepping from his car beneath a sky roiling with indigo and steel-gray clouds. A solitary light blinked in the farmhouse's front window, as if daring him to enter. Odds were, the crooked live oak outside, its branches scratching at the roof like hungry claws, was just an old tree. But as the rusted gate creaked open in protest and the porch steps groaned under his weight, Taylor felt every step pulling him further into a reservoir of memories he had long tried to forget. With a deep breath and steeled determination, he pushed open the heavy front door, ready to confront the ghosts of the past and piece together who he once was. Elsewhere in the city, heat shimmered off the pavement, and a man named Mick was beginning his day at a temp agency. Flipping down his shades and checking his phone, he arrived earlier than expected, hoping his punctuality might impress someone. Despite his worn, frayed sleeves and a hunched stance that betrayed years of hardship, Mick exuded a quiet resilience. Even the agency's curly-haired receptionist with brilliant green eyes noted the stark contrast between his disheveled appearance and the determination in his gaze as she handed him a calendar with no shifts inked on it. "How about driving?" she suggested gently, hinting at a temporary gig he might have missed. Grumbling thanks and checking for spare bus fare in his well-worn jacket, Mick resigned himself to another day of scrabbing through a chaotic job market. His modest apartment south of Boyle Heights offered little solace, a home in a building where an elderly couple known for their endlessly chirping cockatiels rented rooms with drafty windows and memories of better times. Dust spiraled in the fading light by his sagging desk, and envelopes stamped "Final Notice" piled up like unresolved chapters. Yet on stifling nights, Mick would ride his bicycle through Los Angeles. The city, transformed into a blur of headlights, red signals, and melting skyscrapers, became his escape, where every turn promised a fleeting sense of freedom. One night, as he navigated the pulsing streets, he wandered off to Alvarado between 2nd and 3rd, drawn by the enticing geometry of Egg Eye's spotlights and the lingering aroma of food trucks. There he encountered a familiar shape leaning against his handlebars, a not-quite friend from years past, headphones draped around his neck as if echoing a long-forgotten melody. Mick peeled away a bit of foil from his makeshift tamale, his mind wandering through memories of past jobs and friendships forged in the haze of youth. Miles away on another journey, Mara was busy rewriting her narrative. One brisk afternoon in a library, she had untangled her jet black hair and tied a blue ribbon around her braid before shoving a shelved book with a resounding slap and shouting, "Stop making those sounds!" The shocked murmurs and harsh retorts from enraged customers were forever etched in her memory. 3 figures, however, stood out among the chaos: the woman in thin, cruel glasses who accused her of igniting the section on Hinduism, the man in a mustard yellow scarf who screamed "Pyro!" as flames burst from the book, and Aiden, a boy whose persistent questions about her cryptic remark "can't take the heat" haunted her long after the incident at her job at a rundown ranch near Lone Mountain. Their memories fused together into a collage of painful lessons and bittersweet humor. After graduation, during a midnight rendezvous at a Sonic drive-in with her old Toyota, pointed north toward Salt Lake City and beyond, Mara revealed everything. "Listen," she told Aiden, "I love your insane ideas, but I never wanted to set the world on fire." Her statement, soft yet defiant, marked her departure from Las Vegas, a city of burned-out expectations and shattered dreams. Text later. Aiden wished her luck as she traveled further north to Missoula, then even farther into Spokane, where her presence set tongues wagging in underground coffee houses, though each new place brought its own set of challenges. From head shop crews to skeptical onlookers, Mara continued her journey, leaving behind fragments of her past like a scarlet sticker on a dusty dashboard. In a twist of fate, 8 hours after nearly veering into Canada by mistake, Mara found herself back reconnecting with memories of her grandfather near Bellingham. His beloved farmhouse had long been reclaimed by wild overgrowth, yet he had transformed part of his aging woodshop into a sanctuary for his passion, an enormous robot he lovingly named Art. What began as a modest project had, following his heart's decline, grown into a colossal assembly of spare parts. A silent testament to a man defying time. "I won't say it needs you," he wheezed when Mara appeared unexpectedly on his stoop at dusk, "but I'm not too proud to accept your help." Their embrace, fraught with the weight of unspoken regrets and mutual understanding, bridged the gap between past and present. On weekends, Mara mingled with bands that played with unbridled energy in Bellingham's subterranean basements. There, in the charged atmosphere of old punk clubs, she occasionally glimpsed Aiden amid half-disassembled amps and battered cables. He seemed both familiar and enigmatic, a figure who had transcended the chaos of youthful rebellion into someone capable of nuanced answers, hidden behind dark eyes and crumpled hoodies. Their silent exchanges spoke of battles fought, dreams deferred, and the unyielding promise of unspoken understanding. In another part of this shifting panorama, Mick found himself face to face with Aiden as they crossed paths in a neighborhood park. The late afternoon shadows stretched over graffiti-tagged handball courts, the walls screaming with messages like Tyler's band Sooks mingled with tender remnants of youthful initials that clung desperately to bleary hearts. Aiden's raw red tattoo burned like a secret on his exposed shoulder, a testament to a past filled with both passion and pain. "Mick, freaking Sullivan on a bike," Aiden greeted him with half-amused disbelief. They traded words and memories that day, stories of college misadventures, forgotten band demos titled Radiation Angel, and pranks that at once set off Romanesque conflagrations at the worst possible moments. As the duo meandered out of downtown into the spaces between Koreatown and Hollywood forever, their conversation turned to the inevitable questions of change and the way friends drifted apart as life's unfinished projects took shape. In a quiet benchside conversation beneath the shimmering branches of a weathered oak, Aiden confessed, "Half my class moved to Seattle for jobs, but I'm sticking it out here." Mick's response was a pensive nod, acknowledging both the irony and the bittersweet truth that nothing in life remained as it once was. Amid laughter, tentative questions, and long silences filled only by the rustling of leaves, Mick finally murmured, "You remember Mara?" Aiden recalled her with a distant smile. "She called me from Alaska last year." For a long moment, the weight of lost connections and embered hopes pressed between them before they resumed riding their bikes through a city that, despite crumbling overpasses and fading streetlights, still held the promise of new beginnings. As twilight gave way to an inky night scattered with neon glows and whispered farewells, each thread of these disparate lives, Audrey's discovery, Jay and Mona's starlit storytelling, Garrett's playful hauntings, Taylor's reluctant return, Mick's tireless pursuit of stability, Mara's relentless quest for reinvention, and Aiden's steady defiance of time, wove together into a tapestry of shared human experience. They were all, in their own ways, navigating the spaces between memory and possibility, past mistakes and future triumphs. In the final quiet moments before dawn, as the remnants of urban chaos melted into the promise of a new day, Mick thought back to a simple, bittersweet refrain. "I thought you were dead." A remark that had once been a declaration of loss but now resonated as an ode to survival. Whether in a land of tangled memories or on a winding road toward unknown destinations, the echo of their collective pasts reminded them that no matter how far they traveled, home was where the unfinished stories gathered like embers, waiting for the spark that would set them all aglow once more. And so, as the sun rose over a city that had learned to cherish every whispered secret and every fractured dream, life began anew, a story without a definitive end, just a promise that every sunrise would bring a chance to write another chapter. Audrey never believed herself a time traveler, yet she possessed a subtle gift, the ability to slip into moments past and future as naturally as flipping through the pages of a cherished book. One soft Tuesday morning, as gentle clouds draped delicate shadows over the kitchen table, an unexpected discovery unraveled the quiet order of her life. In the warm, sunlit kitchen, her mother Margaret was busy kneading dough, tiny motes of flour swirling around her skilled fingers. While reaching for a glass of orange juice, Audrey accidentally nudged a photo album off the counter. It landed open on the floor, revealing vibrant snapshots of wide-eyed children from long ago. "Who are these kids?" Audrey asked, holding up a picture of a little girl whose curly hair and sparkling eyes radiated laughter. Margaret paused her work and adjusted her glasses, her expression shifting to something mysterious. "I think you know," she replied, her voice carrying secrets of its own. Studying the photograph intently, Audrey was struck by an uncanny familiarity. The freckles scattered across the girl's nose like beloved constellations from her own recollections. And then, realization struck her like a sudden gust of wind. "This is me!" she exclaimed in disbelief, even as the evidence suggested another era entirely. With a subtle smile, Margaret returned to her dough, inviting Audrey to explore not only that album, but the other shadowed secrets hidden throughout the creaking hallways of their old Victorian home. Upstairs, behind faded wallpaper and the weight of quiet years, lay an attic filled with dusty trunks and boxes labeled with names whispered only in hushed tones. Each relic tugged at Audrey's imagination, weaving together a tapestry of untold adventures, generations bound in mystery and wonder. That morning ignited in her a breakthrough, not as a literal journey through time, but a heartfelt dive into her family's soulful legacy. With every step, she began cataloging memories written long ago by her ancestors, and perhaps even by herself. Elsewhere, under a black sky lit with scattered stars, Jay and Mona found their own escape on the city rooftop. As the night held its breath before an incoming rain, Mona pointed upward, her finger tracing unexpected shapes among the stars. "What's that one?" she asked, her tone threaded with curiosity. Jay squinted, though his attention wavered between the constellations overhead and the way Mona's hair cascaded over the rooftop gravel. Human with unfinished projects?" he teased, half smiling at the absurdity. Mona grinned, her teeth catching the starlight. "Is that what you call your autobiography?" she joked, her tone warm yet mischievous. "More like my disaster piece," Jay replied with a quiet chuckle before allowing his arm to brush against hers. A gentle gesture amid the distant drone of a helicopter and the low murmur of late-night cars. Then, with a spark of genuine interest, Mona suggested, "What if we wrote something together? Something entirely our own, like a made-up tale, not dictated by fate." Jay looked back up at the illuminated heavens. "Like this?" he said, gesturing to the shifting sky. "Exactly," she affirmed. Together they spun fragments of fantastical stories, heroes in distant worlds etched against the night, until the easily fading magic of the stars gave way to the persistent patter of rain, compelling them to retreat but leaving their shared vision burning like an ember. In another corner of this woven narrative, young Garrett, only 10 years old, had written his first haunting tale. He had heard whispers of a ghost that rattled old toys, a phantom whose presence compelled the neighborhood kids to dare one another to leave windows open at Aaron's house while the lights remained on. The ghost, in its mysterious way, left handwritten messages scrawled in wild, chicken-scratch letters on crinkled brown paper and folded into paper planes that drifted eerily from shadowy corners. One note bluntly shouted, "What's for dinner?" and caused a stir when discovered by the school lunch staff. Another cry, "Too loud!" fell from a light fixture during a school assembly, adding to the legend. Too timid to claim credit or protest against being sidelined from future mischief, Garrett used these spectral messages to his advantage, joining clubs and navigating the social labyrinth of childhood. When the geometry club sidelined him for not being a member, a cryptic email arrived with the subject line, "Do they bite?" and a simple retort from Aaron, "Yes, of course they bite," ran like a secret code between them. Though his voice grew quieter as years passed, by senior year, Garrett shone academically with 8 AP credits and a scholarship to an honors college far away, a place where he would no longer be simply dismissed as a mean-spirited prankster. His promise, delivered with a mix of mischief and resolve, echoed, "I promise I'll haunt you." Meanwhile, Taylor found himself drawn back to the crumbling family farmhouse, a relic that had weathered countless generations. The old farmhouse, its white paint blistered and peeling, sagged uneasily on its foundation, like a weary giant drifting into sleep. His ancestors had toiled on this land, raising crops, children, and secrets too numerous to count. Taylor had avoided returning since that chaotic Thanksgiving filled with overbearing aunts and sticky-fingered cousins, haunted by the sense that the farmhouse had robbed him of a piece of his identity. Yet one stormy evening, with the sky roiling into deep indigo and steel-gray hues, he finally stepped out of his car. A solitary light in the front window flickered on and then off, as if daring him to confront the spectral memories hidden within. His gaze lingered on an ancient live oak whose twisted branches scraped against the roof like brittle claws. A tree, rumored by his parents to harbor something ominous yet unseen. With skeptical laughter masking his trepidation, Taylor ascended the creaking porch steps. The wind whipped at his coat, grit stung his eyes, and the gate swung open with a protest from its rusted hinges before slamming shut again. Taking a steadying breath, he pushed open the heavy front door and stepped inside, bracing himself to face both the haunted past and the uncertain future. Not far away, in the bustling heart of the city, Mick's morning unfolded at the local temp agency. Flipping down his shades, he glanced at the time on his phone, early enough to give him a moment of quiet optimism. Despite his worn, disheveled appearance, sleeves frayed and posture hunching like a wary dog in the shadows, he attracted attention. A curly-haired woman with brilliant green eyes briefly smiled at him as she handed over a calendar devoid of any scheduled shifts. "How about driving?" her gentle tone suggested, referencing his trusty bicycle, hinting at possibilities amid an otherwise uncertain day. Mick grunted a thanks, checking the bus fare still tucked in his jacket pocket as he pondered just how much further he was from escaping his cycle of tight situations. Mick's modest life continued a few blocks south of Boyle Heights, where he rented a cramped space from a kindly older couple whose cockatiels never slept behind perpetually open windows. As he rolled his bicycle up to that weathered door, the birds eyed him with soft, pale yellow glances, almost like faded headlines of a long-forgotten story. Inside, the empty refrigerator mocked him by its contrast to the relentless August heat that seethed around him, and dust twirled in the dying light streaming from a window. His sagging desk, plastered with envelopes stamped "Final Notice," bore silent witness to the slow, steady toll of time. On especially hot nights, Mick escaped on his bicycle, letting Los Angeles reveal itself as a dizzying collage of shifting lights, melting skyscrapers, and endless avenues. Pedaling along, he sought solace in freedom, a fleeting escape where he could lose himself in the rain-dappled streets and the promise of nowhere in particular. One evening, while biking along Alvarado between 2nd and 3rd, he paused by a trailer park lit by surreal spotlights and drifting food trucks, their iron scents riding the cool night air. There, amidst the urban maze, he encountered a long-forgotten acquaintance leaning against his handlebars, an echo of the past embodied in coiled headphone cords and wistful memories, reminding him that even old ghosts could reappear when least expected. At another edge of these interlaced destinies, Mara's life combusted into vivid, raw moments. In a crowded library, she casually untangled her jet-black hair and tied a sparkling blue ribbon around her braid before smashing a shelved book with her open hand. "Stop making those sounds," she bellowed, her voice cutting through the murmur of enraged customers. Outraged onlookers screamed insults, one woman even calling her a freak. Mara would never forget three figures from that day. The stern woman in thin crew glasses who insisted Mara had ignited the Hinduism section, the loud man draped in a mustard yellow scarf who hollowed pyro as flames danced on the pages, and Aiden, the persistent soul who, though not present during the incident itself, would later incessantly question the meaning behind her cryptic, "can't take the heat" remark. Their later collaboration on a robotics project at his parents' rundown ranch near Lone Mountain only deepened the echo of that day. "You know I hate repeating myself," she would say when pressed for details. Eventually, after months of his patient prodding, Aiden ceased his questioning, until one fateful midnight at a Sonic drive-in, her resolve cracked open. As Mara's old Toyota pointed resolutely north toward Salt Lake City and beyond, she confessed quietly, "I love your insane ideas, but I never meant to set the world on fire." The next day, as her phone buzzed amid a pile of old concert shirts and unpaid bills, a text from Aiden appeared. "Good luck up north. Write me when you find work." Mara's journey had since swept her through Salt Lake, then Missoula, where coffeehouse denizens, despite their rough edges, allowed her a brief warmth, until finally she found herself in Spokane. Wandering near a bulletin board at a vegan co-op, she caught the attention of a youthful clerk who recognized her name. As if she had once ignited a spark on the internet. Even as she attempted a cool retreat, the lingering smell of burnt soy milk and the pull of past dynamism reminded her that change, however inevitable, was never without its bittersweet traces. Many miles in memories north near Bellingham, Mara reunited with her grandfather at his modest property, a place where overgrown weeds had long wrestled with abandoned subdivisions. Since falling ill, he had poured his remaining time and funds into constructing an enormous robot dubbed Art in his cluttered woodshop. Art had grown like a defiant scrap metal tumor following his heart surgery, and when Mara appeared unexpectedly one dusky evening, Grandpa wheezed with a playful honesty. "I won't say it needs you, but I'm not too proud to accept your help." They embraced, a moment of shared warmth, before old tempers and unspoken grief forced him to insist that she leave sooner rather than later. On weekend nights, Mara found herself riding with local bands in the cramped basements of Bellingham, where raw, unfiltered music and unpolished dreams collided. In those dim settings, she occasionally glimpsed Aiden, now a figure both diminished and magnified by time, working quietly among half-assembled amps and tangled cables. His naturally dark hair and unguarded eyes told stories of a boy who matured, yet never fully abandoned his reckless passion for creation. In quiet moments, as he recounted memories of college dorm room relics and cold slices of pizza left beside stubborn math proofs, Aiden's voice evoked lost years when many of his peers had flown to Seattle in search of brighter opportunities. "I'm sticking it out here," he would say, with a half smile that hinted at both defiance and nostalgia. In one unexpected reunion, Mick, having spent countless hours navigating the gritty tapestry of Los Angeles, ran into Aiden as if by fate. "Mick freaking Sullivan on a bike?" Aiden called out with a mix of astonishment and genuine delight. Mick exhaled a laugh as he recalled past misadventures, and together they meandered through urban neighborhoods until they settled at Alvarado Park, its concrete bleached orange by sodium lights. Over quiet words and shared memories, they traded stories of college days, band demos titled Radiation Angel, a raw punk echo of youth, and moments when fights broke out at disaster shows blamed on wayward pyrotechnics. When Mick hesitantly mentioned Marah, Aiden confirmed in a subdued tone that she had called him from Alaska the previous year. A bittersweet reminder that some bonds, though fragmented by distance, could never truly be severed. Their conversation shifted as Aiden revealed a raw red tattoo, once his middle name, now reimagined as blazing curves stretching from collarbone to elbow. "She wrote last week, from a place in Quebec I can't even pronounce," he said, the statement hanging between them like a shared secret. Mick, running his fingers over his slowly regrowing shaved scalp tinted with soft pink hues, asked, "Would she say?" Aiden repeated a familiar refrain, "Nothing burns so bright / as long / as this," leaving both men to ponder the fragile beauty of passionate, transient moments. As old towers and neon dreams hovered against the deepening twilight, their lives intertwined once more. A quiet promise that even when past and present collided, the future remained an unwritten canvas. In time, the many threads of their lives, Audrey's quest into ancestral memories, Jay and Mona's rooftop dreams, Garrett's haunted pranks and growth, Taylor's reluctant return to a haunted farmhouse, Mick's daily struggles and fleeting triumphs, Mara's turbulent journeys and passionate partings, and Aiden's resilient, ever-evolving creative spirit wove themselves into a single tapestry. Their parents had once remarked that they were all engineer-type, pragmatic souls expected to build cold machines, yet each nurtured a wild heart, a desire to create something that burned with life. Through long rides on urban streets, twilight conversations over cherry limeade, and unexpected reunions beneath neon-soaked skies, they discovered that every memory, every spark of creation or moment of loss, added depth to the story of who they were. Though life often set them adrift in separate directions, from bustling cities to quiet, forgotten corners, they remained tethered by their shared history and unyielding hope. And so, as dawn broke over a city reborn and the hush of night surrendered to gentle morning light, they continued onward. Each of them, ever haunted by the past yet driven by the promise of tomorrow, turned their individual chapters into one grand interlaced narrative. In that enduring tapestry of laughter, sorrow, and breathtaking possibility, they learned that even amid unfinished stories and scattered memories, life was worth every daring moment, every fleeting, brilliant spark. The book of their lives remained open, its next pages waiting to be written with bold strokes of passion and quiet whispers of hope.